Wagwan everybody. Despite that, CJ at first glance seems like a pretty narrow-minded person that does not pay attention to many details. His psychology seems to be more complicated than it looks like, and an average player won't ever notice that. Even I for a lot of time didn't really deep it until recently, and actually I even saw a lot of myself in Carl, which was pretty interesting to realize. Anyway though, today we'll try to answer the question, why did CJ leave Los Santos for Liberty City following the death of his little brother Brian? So again, CJ left San Andreas for Liberty City in 1987 after he caused the death of his 10-year-old brother Brian in unknown circumstances. But why did he leave? Wasn't it a moment in which his family needed him the most? Was he unable to handle what he's done? Let's see what the game says. It suggests two options. The first is suggested by Frank Tenpenny in the Green Seba mission, which is that CJ's been forced by his family and friends to skip town.
Yeah, homies for life? Street loyalty? That's all bullshit, Carl. Didn't you learn that when they ran you out of town just cause you let Brian die?
The second one is probably the obvious one, which is that CJ left Los Santos out of shame, which is indicated by the regret for his decision that CJ felt throughout the story.
Yeah, but you're right. I was a buster when my family needed me the most. Hey, I let Brian die, man.
As well as by the fact that characters like Sweet or Ryder definitely held grudges towards CJ during the story. So, you know, if they ran him out of town, why would they complain that he left now? Obviously, those two options seem to be quite opposite, but in reality, they align very well and both sides can be right in this case. The way I see it is, CJ in some way was fully responsible for the death of his 10-year-old little brother. Because of that, his family and friends, but especially family of course, was proper mad with him. I think it's logical to assume that Brian's death was caused by CJ's immaturity, lack of responsibility. Basically, it was just purely his stupid mistake. Maybe, I don't know, he took Brian for some gangbanging or something and he didn't make it, or maybe he was just too young to be putting in serious work like that. I mean, he was 10 years old. Which, by the way, we know from one of the pre-release PlayStation magazines published by Rockstar. Yeah, but anyway, CJ made a bad immature call that caused Brian's death. So, he was feeling mad guilty and his family were giving him a hard time. You know, they were just simply mad at him. I think what it looked like was that, you know, all the Sweets and the Kendalls and the Riders for some time just couldn't even stand to look at him. They just couldn't accept what happened and they were constantly offloading their frustration on CJ. However, it's not like they wanted Carl to disappear from their lives and forget about him whatsoever. No, absolutely not. It was just a period of accepting the reality, accepting what happened and accepting the fact that CJ simply messed up here. But CJ was still family and he just had to face the consequences of his mistake. And it was not only the period in which CJ's family had to accept what he done and realize that, okay, everybody makes mistakes, that's what makes us human, it's time to put it behind us, not hold grudges and move on. But also, it was a period for CJ himself to accept his own mistakes and forgive himself. And that is exactly what went wrong here. This period was very hard for CJ and his family. A period full of frustration and guilt. But it was a test for both CJ's family and CJ himself. A test that in order to pass it, either CJ and his family had to forgive. However, CJ didn't pass this test, and neither did his family, because CJ took it all very seriously. He couldn't see that this period is just a period, and that it will end. CJ was aware that he messed up and was feeling bare guilty. He took his family's negative attitude as a statement that he's not welcome here anymore. He lost hope for any forgiveness from his family, and Carl, in order to forgive himself, his family's forgiveness was absolutely necessary. Carl, what is the point of forgiving yourself if the people that you love don't forgive you? At least that's how I feel. So here, both parties acted absolutely anti-family. His family, and yes, I mean mainly Sweet here, complained at CJ all the time. Why mainly Sweet? Well, because Sweet is that kind of a person. I already told you my opinion of Sweet in the episode about Ryder's betrayal. He was a hypocrite, was lazy and unambitious. Why do I think that? Well, he made bad decisions, he was not a good gang leader, he was very conservative and lacked the ability to adapt to the ever-changing environment around him, which resulted in GSF almost falling apart completely by 1992. For example, in the introduction movie, he says that he's got all the shit he needs.
This is the biggest money-making opportunity that guys like us will ever see.
I got all the shit I need. Man, I thought we was in this for the hood. Not destroying the family, man.
And yet in the same time, he'd be complaining about how the gang situation is horrible and all that. But no, that was not his fault. Cause the crack cocaine is bad, homies are not loyal, and this?
Man, it's just crazy. Everybody blasts on fools first, then ask questions second.
Yeah, that's so rude still. My sworn enemies, rival gangsters, people that have been born with a finger on a trigger, who have to rob in order to be able to afford bread, don't politely ask me for permission to take over my businesses, my territories, and don't ask me for permission to shop crack? Truly rascal scandalous. Oh, and what actions did he take after the feds done a sweep in the hood, as Ryder tells us in the 9s and AKs mission, and GSF had no firepower to defend themselves?
So, what kind of guns we working with now?
One time came through, raid the spot. We ain't got shit now.
Well, what you gonna do if the ballers roll through? Throw shoes at her?
Yeah, he was playing some stupid game sitting on the couch in his yard. If not for CJ, who used his brain and figured out that, as he brilliantly stated, they can't throw bloody shoes at the ballers, I guarantee you, Sweet wouldn't have done nothing about it. And the worst thing is, and it will be crucial especially in today's video, is that Sweet could not admit to himself that he was doing wrong. He thought he was being traditional, moral and fair. So basically, Sweet was delusional. He saw himself as someone better than he actually was. And in the context of giving CJ a hard time after Brian's death, it's very common for people like that to justify their own flaws by pointing out other people's mistakes. So for example, let's say I done went and robbed a local shop. The feds grabbed me and asked me why did I rob the shop. And if I was a delusional person like Sweet, I would say, yo, but I saw my man robbing a shop 2 weeks ago, so if he can, I can too, innit? Yeah, I know that it sounds bare dumb, but trust me, some people are like that, and Sweet was defo a lot like that. So delusional people do that because obviously, deep inside, they see that what they do is wrong. I mean, they do have them thoughts in the back of their minds that what they do, how they act, don't seem too right. But they're too scared to admit it and accept these thoughts, so they need to convince themselves that they are right. And obviously, objectively, they'll never be right, but nothing gives you more validation that A, justifying your mistakes with the fact that someone else committed the same mistake, and B, complaining at others. Complaining at others in general gives you the feeling of superiority over someone that you complain at. That's because you got the advantage at the time, because it's not you but that person who messed up. So them people will capitalize on every single one of your mistakes to the absolute maximum. Their objective will not be to fix the problem and show you that you done wrong, but they'll just complain at you for the sake of it and for as long as you'll care about it. They do that because it gives them that feeling of superiority, therefore their self-esteem goes up, hence they question less whether their behavior and approach is right, so they're getting more convinced that what they do is right, even though it's not. And all that because they are too terrified to admit not only to others but also to themselves that their behavior is incorrect and is harmful for people around them. And that is exactly what Sweet was like in my opinion. So now going back to CJ, Sweet was giving him a hard time for the sake of it, just so in his head he can justify his mistakes by pointing fingers at others. And CJ, still being a very young person, somewhere around the age of 18 probably, misinterpreted Sweet's intentions. Cause the truth is that Sweet loved Carl and eventually he would forgive him, but because of the type of a person he was, he did not give Carl any support and he defo did not look like he ever gonna forgive him. So Sweet overly expressed his frustration at Carl and forgot that it's in these moments when CJ needed his support the most. Especially that CJ was fully aware that it was his fault. I mean, I know I can't prove it, but I am personally convinced that that was the case. I mean, CJ is not a cold, evil, heartless person. Could you even imagine CJ, after causing the death of his little brother, saying that it weren't his fault and making up excuses for himself and that? In my opinion, no way. The constant exaggerated criticism that Sweet was giving Carl, the criticism that was not so to help Carl understand what he done wrong, but only to boost his own self-esteem, gave CJ an impression that he is not welcome around here no more. When you see that somebody is not trying to fix the issue and is just giving you issue for the sake of it, it's very logical to come out with such a conclusion that you're not welcome anymore. And as we can see throughout the GTA story, Sweet, despite often treating Carl unfairly, was a sort of a hero in Carl's eyes. CJ looked up to Sweet, and as we can see towards the end of the San Andreas' story, CJ was ready to help his brother rebuild the gang, despite the fact that he didn't really want it. He was doing it solely because Sweet was his brother and he loved him, so he was ready to sacrifice a bit of what he created and help his brother in whatever he wanted, even though he disagreed with him. It was this unconditional love for Sweet that told Carl to help him. So going back to post Brian's death period, CJ saw that his idol was constantly giving him a hard time. He reasoned that he ain't welcome, so he decided not to intrude, hence he left. And it was simply a result of Sweet overly exaggerated criticism that at some point should have turned into forgiveness and support, which it didn't, and as well a result of the fact that CJ took it a lot more seriously than he probably should have done. And I am absolutely convinced that the other of CJ's family members like Kendall or his mum did at some point turn grudges into forgiveness, but for CJ it was Sweet's opinion that mattered, because Sweet was his father figure, someone whom he always tried to impress, his hero, his idol. Sweet, by complaining at CJ for Brian's death so much, unconsciously made Carl a kind of a person that will never seek attention, that will rarely ask for help, that will take every negative feedback very seriously, and that will easily give up if anything goes wrong. This had its consequences in the story of GTA San Andreas, but that is a subject for another video that you'll see on the channel in the future. Let me know whether you agree with my conclusions and could you identify with CJ here, because I definitely can. This whole analysis shows how brilliant the GTA story writers are and how advanced is the psychology of certain characters, even if it's not blatantly emphasized in the game, and you have to look deeper to figure out certain patterns. Thank you for watching. Respect.